The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord. Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. Today, we have two wonderful stories, maybe three stories. The first story is about Elijah. We find this from our first reading today. And there are the two stories from the Gospel. First, Jesus walking on the sea. And second, Simon Peter struggling walking on the water after he took his eyes out of Jesus. Our first reading today is from the first book of Kings. It brings us a very known story about Elijah. You might remember the story. If we go back a little bit from where we began today, Elijah just killed 450 Baal prophets. The story goes like this. Elijah called these prophets, and he told them to ask their God to bring down fire to consume the sacrifice. So these 450 prophets were praying and praying and praying. The fire didn't come down. And later on, Elijah was mocking them. I like the way he was mocking. He was saying to them, "Cry aloud. Surely he is a God. Either he is meditating, your God is meditating, or he was wandered away, or he is on a journey, or perhaps your God is asleep and he must be awakened. So cry out." They were praying loud. No fire came. Then the time for Elijah to pray came, and he told the people around him, "Bring water, a lot of gallons, put on the sacrifice." They did that. All the firewoods were covered with water, and even the sacrifice itself. Then Elijah prayed, God, show your presence to these people. Show yourself. Bring fire to consume all these gifts. Then the fire came down. All the sacrifices were consumed. Then Elijah was angry of these people. He ordered them to be killed, all these prophets. So after the king and Queen Jezebel got the news, the queen sent the message to Elijah that this time tomorrow you're going to be dead. Then Elijah was frightened. He ran away. And he went under the tree. He was just praying to die. He gave up. He said, I better die. Then God told him to go to the mountain. When he was there at the cave, he was told to go out of the cave so that God can come out to meet him. He waited, and the mighty wind came. Then he witnessed the earthquake and fire covering the earth. But none of those revealed God's presence. God finally came to him in a tiny whispering sound. Very tiny whispering sound. God was there. The Lord's salvation comes through kindness and peace. So God was telling Elijah and reminding him that a genuine relationship with God is never the result of force. He used force for those who didn't believe, for those who were not proclaiming the true God. He killed them. But God says the genuine relationship with God is of kindness and peace. The voice of this world speaks at a high volume, but the voice of God is different. In today's first reading, God speaks to Elijah not in thunder, not in an earthquake, not in a fire, but in a tiny whispering voice. God speaks to us in a silence. If we are going to find our place in God's world, we need silence, a time of prayer each day. Yes, we are very busy, but if we want to have more strength, we need to find personal time with God by ourselves, praying to Him, allowing Him to whisper in our ears what He wants us to do. So I'm inviting you today to try to find some times by yourself with your God. Thank Him and bring to Him your needs. We read in the gospel today the story of Jesus walking on the sea toward His disciples. The disciples were terrified, thinking it was a ghost. As they were afraid, Jesus said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." And that is what happens to us. When we are terrified, Jesus is there. Simon Peter wanted to trust if it was Jesus. He said, "If it is you, Lord, command me to come to you." Jesus said, "Come." We see at the beginning, Simon Peter was walking on the water. Just after he saw how strong the wind was, he began to sink. As soon as he took his eyes from Jesus, he began to sink. As soon as he saw the strong wind, he began to sink. I remember 4 years ago, with the youth group, I went to Kansas City. And when I was there at the Words of Fun, it was my first time ever. I never saw in my life the facilities like those. And I was like going around, seeing the kids, going up and down, using all those fast machines. And I said, let me try some of them. I did try some of them. And then there was a point I said, let me try to go up there. It was 301 feet. My friend was in front of me, so we sat and we are going up. I was talking to him, and I was looking around, seeing the beauty of the place. I was so happy to see the beauty of the place. When I was up there, 301 feet, I looked down, and that was my mistake. I was very terrified. You can imagine 301 feet, looking down, and that machine was taking us around. My friend was now very far from me, and then I looked down again. I said, why am I here? I was just praying that to go down. Once I saw the height, I was terrified. Whenever we took our eyes away to the problem, then we're going to sink. Even in our day-to-day lives, when you have disagreement with your wife or husband, with your kids, with your friends, if you focus on the problem, you're going to sink. You have to focus on the person. Say to him or her, yes, I know you have done this, but I love you. We have to focus on the person, to focus to our beloved ones, and not on the problems, not on the winds. Jesus shows us that when he is present, we don't have to be afraid. So let us put our faith in him, our hope and trust in him. Let us focus to him. And when Jesus comes in our presence, the winds come down. With St. Peter today, let us always call upon Jesus for help when we are in trouble. And he will always, immediately, the gospel says, immediately he stretched out his hand, catched Peter. Let us call upon him when we are in trouble. He will be there for us. And let us always focus to him. Let us not take our eyes from Jesus. He is our hope. He is our trust. Let us always focus to him. Focus our eyes to him. And he's going to be present to us. Let us not focus on the waves, not on the situations, not to the world, but to Jesus. He will be there for us. God is good all the time. All the time, God is good.